today. It is truly my honor to have Commissioner Adam Putnam with me as we work together along with our Attorney General Pam Bondi to make a positive difference and to fight organized crime in Florida. And let me tell you how an investigation can start with a suspicious vehicle and end up knowing that we have tagged into a multi-million-dollar organized crime venture. It started in Polk City, a small little community in northern Polk County, with a deputy who saw a vehicle at a gas pump well after the station had closed. The deputy went there, took down the information of the drivers, took down the information of the vehicles, and saw a computer inside of one of the vehicles. Well, it was immediately turned over to our detectives, and what our detectives learned the next day was they had a Bluetooth system going. They had already installed a skimmer in the gas, into the gas pump, and were downloading data. And that's where the investigation began. I'm going to give you the 30,000-foot view. So they were skimming the data. Then they take the data and they transfer it to any magnetic card. We traditionally think of it as a credit card, but they re-encode the magnetic strip on any kind of card. And from there, then they have runners that actually go out and purchase fuel. The vast majority of everything that they're purchasing is diesel fuel, and we saw that. We followed two separate vehicles around between Hillsborough County, Polk County, and some of our folks stretched all the way to Miami. Interestingly enough, as it's reported to us, there's about 30 locations just on the I-4 corridor where there are dump stations, because once they fill their tanks, and what they do is they superimpose gas tanks from 100 to 900 gallons. Now they go to the different pumps, they insert the card, they get the maximum allowed from the pump, and they move on to another gas station. Then they fill the tanks, they go to the dump stations, and from the dump stations, then they resell the fuel on the black market for about $1 less a gallon. Okay, so follow me. It starts with a very alert deputy and taking down some information. We go from the skimmer to the magnetic card. They take the magnetic card to the specially equipped trucks that hold between 100 and 900 gallons. They fill them up at various gas stations throughout Florida, go to what they call dump sites, and there's as many as 30 of them that we know of on the I-4 corridor, and it occurs. Here's the people we've arrested. Here's what's interesting. These folks are charged with racketeering, and that was the focus, and I'll turn it over to the commissioner in just a second, but racketeering is a first-degree felony where these folks are facing 30 years. Attorney General Pam Bondi's prosecutor has charged that in this county for their multi-county function and activity. We're serious about this in Florida, and at the end of the day, the way we do it is with teamwork and partnerships, and I can't think of a better partner than Adam Putnam and his investigative team, which worked brilliantly with us. So I'll turn it over to the commissioner to give you the detail and also the statewide vision. Commissioner.
Thank you, Sheriff. First of all, I want to thank Sheriff Judd and his team, who have been very supportive resources and have exceptionally talented investigators who have sunk their teeth into protecting Florida consumers and Florida's travelers. As many of you know, dating back to 2014, 2015, we began sounding the alarm about these gas pump skimmers that were stealing people's money and stealing people's identity. People often wonder, why is that Department of Agriculture sticker on the gas pump? Well, it means that we're inspecting it to protect you from being ripped off. It used to mean that you weren't, being ripped off used to mean that you weren't getting a full gallon for what you were paying for a gallon, or that you were, paying for 92 octane but not getting it. Now, because of these skimmers, it means that they're getting access to your debit and credit card information, your personal identity, and then they're using that to create fraudulent cards, use those fraudulent cards to purchase mass quantities of fuel, and then monetize that by selling that fuel on the black market at these dump sites up and down the I-4 corridor. The challenge when we began this process was to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law and to have the support of law enforcement. Well, Sheriff Judd and his team have been extraordinary about understanding immediately that this is not simply about a skimmer here and a skimmer there, a pump here and a pump there, but it is part of a large organized conspiracy that reaches into the millions and millions of dollars and costs every consumer money. And so we're very proud to be here today to announce that this is not just a one-off prosecution, but it is a RICO charge. And this should send a very clear signal to the bad guys out there that the cost of doing business just went up when it comes to stealing from Floridians and from families who are visiting our state. In 2015, to give you a sense of the evolution of this crime, in 2015 statewide, we found 169 skimmers across the state. The next year it was up slightly to around 220 skimmers. Last year it was 700 skimmers. And so this is a problem that we are seeing the bad guys continue to evolve and use new technology to adapt. When this problem began, there were very few, if any, security devices on the pump itself. Now, because of law changes that we've made in Tallahassee through our efforts of our department and working with our investigators, now the gas stations are required to have security devices on those pumps. Now the sentencing guidelines are higher because it is a more serious offense to engage in this activity. Now when they find fraudulent credit cards on the front seat of the truck, it is against the law to be in possession of those fraudulent credit cards, because what legal purpose would you ever have to have a stack of 200 blank cards on your front seat as you're downloading data from the gas pump? The technology of the bad guys has evolved from having to install the skimmer and then return to the scene of the crime to retrieve that equipment and then download it. That was the first generation. Version 2.0 was Bluetooth technology, which allowed them to return to the scene of the crime within close proximity, but not have to reopen the cabinet of that fuel pump to retrieve their equipment. So the Bluetooth technology still required them to return to the station, but not have to reopen that cabinet. Now, the newest technology actually uses the cellular network for them to, in real time, download your information when you swipe your card at a gas pump that they have installed a skimmer on. So this is a very real situation, and that's why it is such an important announcement today that we have the support of Sheriff Judd and his department to make a stand here in the I-4 corridor to protect Floridians. Those types of security devices that are on those pumps are the things that we're encouraging consumers to look for when they fill up. We remind people that cash is still the best way to pay for fuel. The next best thing is to use a credit card, not your debit card. If you have the ability to use your debit card as a credit card and not punch in that PIN number to that gas pump, we recommend that you avoid doing that. We recommend that you use a pump that is within a clear line of vision to the clerk who is working inside that station. And we always encourage the traveling public to look at that pump before they swipe their card. If it looks like the door is slightly ajar, if the security tape has been broken, if it looks like there's just something not right about it, don't use that pump. because as we continue to see the influence of the bad guys using these skimmers on pumps, it's not worth the risk. This is not a victimless crime. Everyone pays more in credit card fees. Banks pay more, which means consumers pay more. The fuel station owner loses money. And most of all, consumers are putting their identity at risk as a result of this crime. So I want to highlight the work of Captain Whitman, Lieutenant Cobb, and Investigator Merritt on our team. And I again want to thank Sheriff Grady Judd for his commitment to building this case, investigating this case, and taking a case that is the strongest possible RICO course of action to our prosecutors under Attorney General Bondi. And we're going to send a strong message that Florida is not the place for this organized crime ring to engage in this type of fraudulent activity and prey on Florida citizens. Thank you very much.
Okay, before we go to questions, I forgot to point out Frank Perez. He's one of my favorites here because he's also getting government assistance. Did you hear me? You're not only being ripped off by him stealing from you, but you're also going to work every day to pay your taxes so he can get government assistance. And we see that as a common trait. So why these people are just the tip of the iceberg, and these are the tip of the iceberg of a large multi-million-dollar operation in Florida and a billion-dollar operation across the United States. This is where we're digging in, and this is where the commissioner has drawn the line in the sand. So with that, we'll take any questions you have.
So they're downloading my debit card number, right? Wouldn't I see on my bill down the line, oh my gosh, there are all kinds of extra charges that I didn't make?
That's correct. We always encourage consumers to track their bills, but we also know that when the mail comes a lot of time, or when that email update comes from the bank, a lot of times we're slow to do that. Not everybody's reconciling their bank statement every month on the dot. And we encourage people to do that, because if you see that unusual activity on your credit and debit card bills, then it allows us to track back more quickly where those skimmers are. Unfortunately, not everyone is as attentive to their balance as apparently you are.
Well, I never looked at it.
You've just made my point.
I usually do.
The reality is Ken probably doesn't have any credit.
How long ago did this group start doing it?
Yeah, it's interesting that that you asked that, because we started this particular investigation on December the 11th, and we wrapped it up yesterday with 2 search warrants, one in North Lakeland and one in Plant City, which, by the way, the state is going to follow up with other charges because we found evidence of cockfighting as well. So that'll be 7 more felonies they get to face in addition to their F1. But as a warning, anyone who has a credit card today can sign up with their credit card company, and every time there's a purchase, it'll hit your cell phone. So if you've not signed up so that you can have immediate notification every time there's a charge, that's important to do that, because that way you can help us get onto them within seconds.
That's right.
So Grady, you started the investigation December 11th. How far back before that did this group start doing this?
They have been in operation for a long time. I don't know exactly how long. Oh yes, this is a huge multi-million-dollar operation, and that's why it's so important for us to convey to you why are we here today talking about just one prong of this, because it has been flourishing throughout the state of Florida, and as the commissioner just pointed out, we're seeing more and more skimmers as more and more theft. And here's a message for the prosecutors across the state of Florida. If you're not awake, wake up and see what's happened in your economic crimes area, because these things are being pled down to nothing when what you have at your fingertips is the ability to charge serious felonies and send these people away and protect the consumer's money. But if you let them plead to misdemeanors and third-degree felonies and pretrial releases, then the next thing you know, they're out of here. So pay attention. because it is, let me give you a parallel. It's like saying, oh, it's only shoplifting. No, it's only shoplifting if the 10-year-old or the 12-year-old is taking the stick of bubble gum. That's shoplifting. What we're seeing is organized criminal conduct, very sophisticated organized criminal conduct. And that's why the prosecutors and the other law enforcement officers across the state have to say, no, this is not just the theft of 100 gallons of gas, or this is not just a credit card fraud. This is a piece of an organized crime group. And that's what Commissioner Putnam and Attorney General Bondi and I recognize here with the great work of our detectives, is this is an organized scheme to rip off the people of Florida, and we're just not going to have it.
Sheriff, you said there were multiple dump stations. Were you able to find all those?
Yes,
To shut all those down?
we know where the dump stations are. We have served search warrants at some key locations, and we're watching others. And by the way, if you're buying this gas for $1 or this fuel for $1 less a gallon than it retails for, you're a criminal too, and we're going to be looking for you.
So that was my question. Who is buying this fuel? Like when we say network associates, and then where is this fuel ending up?
Mostly private truckers, not big professional firms, but private truckers, small trucking operations. When they can go there and buy it for $1 less a gallon, that's what they're doing because it increases their profit. But we're looking for you as well because, you know, we don't like people that steal from us. That's just not good. And we are not only going after those that are engaged in racketeering, but we're going to tie you into it as well.
Have you shut any of those down yet?
We just started this prong of this investigation with the great work by our detectives on December the 11th, but you can be sure of one thing, this is the beginning, not the end. So wake up, we're after you.
Commissioner, you say that this technology is evolving. What is your office doing to evolve with that and kind of combat it?
So we have ratcheted up and modified the statutes every year since this hit our radar going back to 2014, making it easier for the detectives to build a case, making it easier for the prosecutors to pursue the case, and creating the sense of awareness, I hope, among consumers about things to look for at the gas pump to protect themselves and to engage the economic self-interest of the gas station owners to be more engaged in inspecting their own pumps every morning, multiple times throughout the day, at every shift change, so that they keep a running log on this. The public's done a pretty good job of throwing the yellow flag when they identify on social media the gas station that was where the skimmer was that ripped them off, and so that has elevated the stakes for gas stations to stay on top of this. But I just want to reiterate something that the sheriff said. We have given, working with law enforcement, working with our sheriffs, working with the investigators who are on the front lines of protecting our identity and protecting our pocketbooks, we have made multiple changes every year to increase the penalties, increase the sentencing guidelines, elevate the offense to felony 1, create the opportunity to build a RICO case. The prosecutors need to pick this up and do their part and run with it. This is not a victimless crime. This is the kind of thing that spreads throughout. This is the kind of bad news that everybody tells their neighborhoods when they get back home to Ohio or Michigan after a 2-week vacation in Florida about, we had a great time, but while we were down there, they stole $1,000 from us and stole our identity, and what a headache it is to try to deal with all of that. We need to send a message that Florida is not the state where you're going to engage in this kind of criminal conduct.
Commissioner, was the state aware of these illegal dump sites prior to this skimming investigation, or is this the first the state has learned that there is a black market for this fuel and now it's connected to the skimming network?
No, we have pointed out from the early days of the discovery of these skimming devices that this was not a localized mom and pop type crime that is merely gathering the data. That is one piece of the larger conspiracy. So skimming your information at the pump is one piece, Using that information to create a fraudulent credit card is the second piece. Monetizing the value of that by purchasing fuel that then goes to these dump sites. And dump site is another term for, that's the illegal purchase point. So when they've taken your money to illegally buy gas, to fill it up to 1,500 gallons in a truck, illegally transporting it, to then unload that fuel to the person who wants to pay $1 less per gallon for it, for their trucks or their construction equipment or whatever, that's the dump site. That's the end user point. That's the consumer point of this illegal activity. And as the sheriff said, he and his team, working with ours, have identified a minimum of 30 just on the I-4 corridor. But this is a crime of statewide scope, which is why the Attorney General has also been so important to our efforts.
As well, they can move these dump sites. So sometimes it's just renting a location at a truck repair shop, a truck storage place, so they can move these sites around. But this is part of the ongoing investigations, and it's massive. The commissioner's team has made arrest after arrest after arrest after arrest. And what we're doing is we are ramping it up even more with this racketeering charge, and we're going to go forward. So it's a multi-county, multi-prong attack. But now we're charging racketeering, and this is just the beginning. This is just a piece of it. We don't have the head of the operation yet, but we do have this piece of the ongoing criminal enterprise.
Sheriff, you find that you're slapping these people on the wrist and they're just getting out and doing it again, have to re-arrest?
We're seeing that all across the state, that prosecutors aren't paying attention to what they need to pay attention to in their economic crimes unit. They're taking this as an individual event, and they're not seeing it for what the investigators and the detectives are telling them. This is part of an organized crime event, so they need to take it serious. Now, I can tell you here, our state attorney's taking it serious. The Attorney General, Pam Bondi's prosecutors are taking it serious. It's time for all of the prosecutors to be as serious as a few of them are.
Commissioner, it was said at one time that you could tug on that little thing where you slide your card in the pump and protect yourself because the skimmer just went right over that and it would pull off. Is that still true, or has that evolved also?
Yeah, that's during the DOS days of the illegal activity, and you saw that on ATM machines too, where they manufactured. That's still going on. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are still there are bad guys who are cutting edge technology, and there are bad guys who are a couple of generations behind. So that is still going on, but we are increasingly concerned about the direct cellular transmission of the information that eliminates the need for the criminal to return to the scene of the crime.
So how can people tell it now if there's a skimmer on something? How can consumers check for one?
Well, we encourage consumers to take several steps to protect themselves. One is to use the pump that's closest to the line of sight for that clerk. You don't, if you can avoid using the pump that's the furthest away from the station, or is the less well lit pump, or any of those types of things. So situational awareness, location, number one. Number two, don't use a debit card at the gas station. If you have to use your debit card, use it as a credit card where you're not entering that additional piece of information about your financial identity. Don't give them the luxury of having your PIN. And before you swipe that card, if you have to use the card, look at the pump. Look to make sure that it's not a jar, or that the locks aren't undone, or that the security tape hasn't been broken. It takes 10 seconds to kind of sweep your eyes over that pump to look for ways to protect yourself, and then monitor your bills. Check your bill when it comes in by email or in the mail to see if there's been that unusual activity. I wish that I could say that there was a pattern to the stations that are more likely to have a skimmer, but there's not. It might be an older station that's mom and pop. It might be a station that just opened last year. I will say this, that the newer security devices are on the newer pumps. So it may be an older station that now has new pumps, or it may be a brand new station, but they do have the more modern technologies to protect you. In the old days, it was like having the key to the office Coke machine. If you had one key to one Coke machine, you had a key to every Coke machine. That's the old days with these gas pumps. That has changed. Now there are unique identifiers. Now there are security devices that if someone opens that cabinet without putting in the proper access code, it shuts down that pump. It won't even function until the store clerk comes out and restarts it. So the new technology is being adopted on a widespread basis by the gas stations, but there are things that consumers can continue to do to protect themselves.
Was it 7-Eleven in Polk City that started this relocation?
I think it was it the Shell station? Sunoco? Sunoco station in Polk City.
Locations?
There's only one of them there. It's about, Polk City's about this long. You'll find it. There's a Shell and a Sunoco.
You don't have the head yet. Where do these folks fall in the grand scheme of things?
Well, obviously, they're blending into the larger organization.
Right.
These people are not up in the organization. They're just part of the people who are coordinating. For example, Kano, he is referred to as the instructor, the teacher, the coach. He is the installer. He understands the systems and the process. He's one of the guys that makes the system work, but he's not up at the top end of the organization, and that's where we're headed, and these racketeering charges will help us get there. Also, the easiest way for the consumer is have your credit card hooked to your cell phone. So every time there's a purchase, I can tell you, if you have that you already know. If you make a purchase, it hits this in seconds after they swipe your card, and that's how you can help us the most and protect yourself the most, because if you get one of those purchases, you can immediately call your credit card company and say, hey, you need to kill this, and then call law enforcement and say, we got something going on at this particular fueling station. Okay? Thank y'all very much. Y'all have a good day. We'll see you soon.
We have a B-roll that Matt